Or, since we always forget that detail. Let's see, I will give it 2 more minutes and then we will see who else shows up, and then I will get us started for the evening. I'm going to figure out how to add music to this one day.
Okay. Hey, Dr. Drexler, I had a question.
Okay, go ahead.
In regards to moving our points to November 1st, like what we account for after this, would the new people that are elected do that then? Because I know that's around that time that new ones get elected, or how does that work?
Yeah, you could do that. You can absolutely do that. It would probably be best if one of us at least kept tabs of what should be recorded in terms of points, but just to sort of not have things go through the cracks. But yeah, you can absolutely have the new officers do those points, submit for those points. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a spreadsheet going already for 2022 for everything that we'll file after November 1st.
Awesome. Cool.
And so with that, we're going to go ahead and get started for the night. Yay! Okay, so first of all, I just want to say welcome to our wSTEM and AWIS chapter meeting tonight. We are very excited. We are coming to a close of the 2021 year for our leadership group here. So there's only a couple more meetings with us, but we are very excited to have another one for our books for the night. And of course, tonight is extra special because we have a special guest with us. And now my computer doesn't want to move, does it? There we go. So of course, following our speaker, we always ask our members just, stay with us for a couple extra minutes. We can kind of go over our chapter updates. And of course, all of our members always have a chance to win some cool wSTEM swag. Everybody likes free stuff. We like to give it. We like to everyone to represent us when they're out and about. So people can be like, hey, what is wSTEM? And we can kind of expand everybody's knowledge as to what we do as our organization. So, like I was saying, tonight is very special. We are going to be welcoming Dr. Andia Chaves Fonnegra. She is an assistant professor of biology at the Wilkes Honors College at FAU's Harbor Branch Oceanographic Institute, which is down in Vero Beach, if I'm not mistaken.
Fort Pierce, close. Yes.
Close. Fort Pierce. I would say I was down there in February and my best friend had wanted me to actually go to Harbor Branch, but of course with COVID it was still closed to public tours, so we weren't able to go. She is a L'Oreal UNESCO for Women in Science Fellow in 2011, and she's also been awarded the 2019 Early Career Research Fellowship by the Gulf Research Programs of the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine. She does some amazing work, and she focuses a lot on improving the management of marine ecosystems by determining how ecological interactions are altered by human activity and global impact, such as climate change and pollution. She does a lot of work specifically with sponges as well, which is really cool because I think sponges are really fun. They're cute. She earned her doctorate degree in marine biology and oceanography from Nova Southeastern University. Woo-hoo. Love that school. Back in 2014. So we're very excited to have you tonight. We are excited to learn all that you can, especially, talking about, how we kind of find our career paths tonight. So with that, I will hand it over to you. Let me end my share screen. There you go.
Okay, let me see. Thank you, Ashley. Actually, I have a sign that says that host disabled participant screen sharing. So could you enable?
Let's see.
Let me check. You should be listed as a co-host now, but I will confirm that, and then you would be able to screen share. You should be able to.
I see
No,
a-
you are listed as a guest
Yes.
still. Hold on just one
Yes.
second. I will. There you go. Now you're co-host. My
Great.
apologies.
That's okay, don't worry. Oh, good. Okay, thank you, everybody. Good evening. Let me reduce some things here. And I'm just gonna start sharing. Let me see. Okay, we'll put it here and hopefully it will disappear soon. So good evening, everybody. It is a pleasure to be here tonight. I've been previously really interested in the women STEM association and groups. And so when they invite me through the FAU, I was very happy, to share a little bit of my career path and my research. So my name is Andia Chaves Fonnegra, long name. And I'm assistant professor of biology. Also a marine ecologist, as you know, my original description job is marine ecologist, but I am now an assistant professor of biology. So today my talk is about the purpose of your unique career path. And this is a very personal perspective. And I will be first giving you an introduction about myself, where I come from, couple of things about how I got where I am. But through the talk, I will go into different steps that I think are really important for any career path. And these steps include the purpose that each of us have in life, or that we think we may have. The location is where we would like to work, or where we would like to be in this planet, basically. The importance of feedback and mentorship by different people, and a couple of tips that I think are important for job applications and that nobody really tells us about. That I discovered through the process of going to interviews and being rejected, and realize, man, what I did wrong, and then from that I kind of like to give some of that feedback that I never had and that I learned different, through different experiences. So let me see if I can move this, hide it somewhere else. It's not hiding, so we'll put it at the bottom. So I'm originally from Colombia, South America. I was born in Bogota City. It's a huge city, bigger than New York, kind of like that size. And I did my bachelor's in science and marine biology at Tadeo Lozano University. This program is 3 years in Bogota City, so in the middle of the Andes Mountains, concrete. And then the last 2 years are in the Caribbean Sea, actually in Santa Marta. Here is Santa Marta, Colombia. It's, it's just a city relatively close to Venezuela, not exactly there, but it's just south of Jamaica. If you trace a straight line, that is where Santa Marta is located. So I finished my undergraduate and continue with a master's in science and marine biology at the National University of Colombia. And the program was a joint graduate program with the Marine and Coastal Institute. The name is INVEMAR. At that time was located in this beautiful peninsula. And the institute was initially founded by Germans in the like 1950s. So it's a very interesting institute, and then the university associated too. So I finished my master's in marine ecology. That's where I decided to work. I did a lot of chemical ecology as an undergrad for my honors. So I actually did my honors thesis at the Marine Institute too, and then I connect there through to my master's. And then I have a gap of different things. I'm going to explain what happened through that gaps. But finally, in 2009, I came to the United States, and I started a PhD in oceanography and marine biology at Nova Southeastern University. And I continue in marine ecology, and I also focus on population genetics and evolution and mathematical modeling, all within the context of marine ecology. So I learned different techniques and methods that I wanted to apply to solve questions that were related to the conservation of coral reefs and restoration of these habitats. So after this time as a graduate student, I started my first postdoc also at NSU, moved to another lab. I actually did my PhD in a lab that was on mostly microbial genomics and population genetics. And then from there, I moved into this lab that was on coral reef restoration and monitoring. So my first year as a postdoc was there. And I got the opportunity to go for a second postdoc at the University of the Virgin Islands. I worked there with coral reef diseases, like mathematical modeling of coral reef diseases, and also marine sponges, different aspects of marine sponges, some of them related to their ability to impede coral reef recruitment, so they can basically deter coral recruits to attach back, and other aspects of the effects of hurricanes on coral reef communities. And then my third postdoc was with the University of Mississippi, and we actually work on a couple of projects in the Cayman Islands and also the Virgin Islands on biodiversity of sponges in the Caribbean Sea. And currently I am at Florida Atlantic University. At the top, we have Harbor Branch. So Ashley mentioned Fort Pierce. So yeah, the institute is between Vero Beach and Fort Pierce. And I have a joint appointment with the Wilkes Honors College that is located in Jupiter. So I mostly teach at the Wilkes Honors College. It's about 1 hour from Harbor Branch. And I do my research at Harbor Branch. And at the top, we have a photograph of Harbor Branch. And at the bottom, the Wilkes Honors College. FAU main campus is in Boca, and it also has other 2 campuses on the south in Davie and Fort Lauderdale. So when somebody gives you this kind of introduction or the bio where they came and, they go here, and they usually, skip a lot of the background information of what happened in between. And a lot of graduate students or even undergraduate students sometimes feel like how, it's kind of some frustration into how people get from one step to the other one, and why it seems so easy for some people, but not for me. And I think sometimes when we give these talks, we always talk about what are the positive things and how great you did and graduated and obtained these awards. But people usually don't tell like what is the back the background or the backstage story. So I just want to give you a little bit of a glimpse into it. So as I mentioned, I did my bachelor's in science, and then I continued into a master's in science because my honors advisor was actually a master's student working with a PI, and I joined that group, and both of them mentored me. And that mentorship made a difference in my decision to go for graduate school. So I started my master's, and I did, I enjoyed. I think it was one of the best times in my life. It was challenging, but it was also really fun. And when I finished, I couldn't find a job in Colombia. So I got into that space in time where you are wondering what to do. I applied to different jobs. I kept finding that the kind of jobs I wanted to do and pursue required a PhD. So I volunteer, I serve as a adjunct faculty. I, went to islands to count birds, whatever was possible. And I live with my family. I jump between friends' houses, my mom's house, and my grandma's house. And then finally, through many applications that I put for a PhD, I was able to get a scholarship and go for a PhD program. I started that PhD into what I call country 2. So this is Colombia country 2. I'm going to keep it just as country 2. And I spent 1.5 years in that program. And through the process, I realized that my mentor values and morals didn't align with mine. And a lot of the students in that lab were very afraid to participate. And the environment was not healthy, basically. I will say that I saw the dark side of science and I lived it for that 1.5 years. And I decided that that was not the kind of environment I wanted to be or learn from, and that I had a very good base through my master's of what science could be and why I was inspired by that type of science. And that was the kind of science I was looking for, and mentorship also. So I decided to quit my first PhD. And from there, in a conference meeting, a professor who had met me before through a summer internship when I was a master's student invited me, actually told me that he had a position and that he would like me to join his lab because he knew that I was a good student, hard worker, and he will give me the opportunity to transfer my credit from this first PhD into his lab and a second PhD. So I took the opportunity and I moved to country 3, which is the United States. And I did my PhD in that laboratory. I was very happy that my professor at that institution realized that I already had some experience. I was very independent, but I liked to work as a team member, and he basically trusted me and let me do what I needed to do and supported me. And that was kind of the key for me in that PhD. I didn't have money or too much funding, so I submit as many applications as I could, and he supported all of them. When I graduated, when I finished, by that time, even that I had applied to different postdocs before I graduated, I didn't got any postdocs. So at that point of my career, I was desperate. So one day I woke up and I decided, well, I'm gonna knock all the doors in this building and ask to all the faculty, all the professors, if anybody needed my services. So it occurs to me that a lot of professors had graduate students that never published their thesis, or honors students that didn't finish their thesis, and they could be interested in publishing chapters of the thesis. So I went and I saw myself as a person that could take that data, reanalyze it, gather more data, and publish what they needed to publish. And one of the faculty members looked at me and said, nobody had offered me that, but I do need that. And I think what you propose is very interesting. So why we don't try? I have some money here. So he actually contracted me for my first postdoc. And I really enjoyed. I did a lot of data analysis and basically sit down and wrote different manuscripts, and all of them got published through 2 years. So the year I stayed there, submitted like 3, and then the year after I still was submitting 2 more, and we published everything with the help, of course, of the students that generated that original data set and all of the co-authors and people that were involved in each of the research. So that was the challenging part, to reconnect everybody, ask all the questions, and get them excited that we will publish it. So it was a great experience. Then when I got into the other postdocs, the Virgin Islands, I had a great experience for 2 years there. However, at the end of the second year, Hurricane Irma and Maria came and destroyed the Marine Science Center. And my possibility of staying in the Virgin Islands for a longer time basically was knocked down by the hurricane. And so couple of our collaborators that had some funding and that have seen my job decided to offer me a postdoc in the University of Mississippi. So I joined them, and through my first year, I actually got the assistant professor position. I have to say that during that postdoc, I learned the final refining my applications, I think, and that's what it helped me. But a lot of the time, you know, as we move through this career, it's not a straight line. It's not as some of the students think that, okay, it's just one after the other one. No, there are always different gaps. And, you know, you all know it's kind of maybe just like little by little random things come into your life. And you may wonder as a female at what time you're going to have kids. We know the biological clock and the career clock, sometimes they don't match, you know, specifically if you want to be in a professor, it's kind of like they overlap. And some people are able to have their kids before their PhD or after, or through the postdoc, or when they get into that position. And then in the process, we also have a lot of different circumstances, including family members that passed away. And in some way, that circumstances disrupt our path and at the same time, enrich our purpose. I will say it in that way. So what are the expectations when we are in this game of finding a job in science as females? When I was a graduate student, I tried to figure it out in many ways. I'm like, I actually don't know the rules. I always play sports, and for me, kind of like understanding how the game is played was important, but I couldn't figure it out. It's just, you just go there, go with the flow, you know? So when I was putting all my applications and applying for postdocs and jobs, and even applying for scholarships as a graduate student, I realized that there were four important steps in this process of defining your career path and what you want to do. The first one is, what is your purpose? So I realized you need to have clear your passion in some way, and how your experience and interest may fit, and how do you want to contribute to this world. Sometimes we just sit alone into a lab and do a lot of like repetitive tasks, like pipetting things, and we forget, you know, like, how do you really want to contribute to this world? Because as a student, sometimes we isolate and we are just part of a project or part of something, but we need to think a little bit bigger into how do you want to really change this world in some way. The location, I think it's super important to define where do you want to live and how that may affect you and your family. So moving to extreme locations sometimes is an interesting experience, but do you want to be there all the time? Or are you following just the most top universities because they are the best ones, or they pay me better, or it's where your family is? So I think this is one that also, it's tricky because you're trying to apply to certain places where there is a position that fits you, but it's not in the place where you want to be. And I think in some way you need to find them to be aligned if you want to be happy and enjoy it, you know. Now, the feedback and mentoring is super important. So at any level, and I think even as an assistant professor, it's good to have mentors too. I still ask my mentors a lot of questions. We never stop learning, and it's good that we ask for feedback. I think a lot of the most successful students are the ones that are always asking for feedback in some way to grow. Not because there is needy or they don't know how to go, but because they really want to define or find the best path for them. And also within that mentors, we tend to forget that family can give us a lot of feedback. And then the application process, depending what you are applying as a, you're applying to grad school, or you're applying for a scholarship, or you're applying for a job, you just need to understand the job application process and what the academic search committees are looking for in each of them. At the beginning, I couldn't understand that. So I will give you some tips about that. So the way I see this is like, if you have a clear purpose of what you want to do, then you can define where you want to be or try to match it. And then you can see how your purpose fit in society and how society can give you the mentoring or the ideas so you can also fit in society. So it has to be both ways, because if we, drive solo in our own path without accounting what society, standards are for certain things, then you will not be able to grow within society or communicate what you want to communicate. And then the last purpose is the last part is the application process. And if you all have aligned these three, the application process is going to be so much easier. So for me, my purpose starts with curiosity as an undergrad student about coral excavating sponges. So here at the bottom, we have some photographs of a coral excavating sponge. This is the orange one, and this is the coral on the side. So here is the sponge, here's the coral, sponge and coral, and here is a sponge that already overtook the whole coral colony. So what it drove my interest was that a sponge, which is an animal, but doesn't have, it looks more like a plant, how a sponge could kill a coral and then take over it. And that has basically just opened all curiosity levels. And to these days, it's still part of me, and it's still really interesting to me. So my research interests start from there. It starts from how marine organisms compete, especially benthic organisms that cannot move, that doesn't have mouths, that don't bite. So my research interested at that level was more at the organism level and how they could produce, for example, chemical compounds to kill the coral. Then from there, I move also into how they reproduce, and that was some parts of my dissertation, and then how they disperse and take over certain reefs, and how their populations are structured. So I mix some of population genetics, and then from there at the population level, I jump also into community dynamics, because I wanted to understand how this type of competitive interactions between corals and sponges could actually change community patterns at the level of the coral reef. So my objective at the end is to try to understand how at each of these levels, organism, at the population or the community level, climate change and pollution might be affecting the structure of coral reefs or other marine and coastal ecosystems. And I use different mathematical modeling approaches to answer different series of questions. So as you can see, I'm not just in one level or the other one. My projects sometimes are in one or in another one, or sometimes they can cross different levels in ecology. So just want to bring this basic definition of what is a sponge, because I'm going to talk a little bit about sponges. I already mentioned the excavating sponge. So sponges, as we can see here on the right, don't look like Bob sponge, actually. I think Bob sponge looks mostly like a dishwasher sponge, like a plastic contamination, like pollution into the ocean, but that's okay. I like the cartoon. But these sponges are sedentary filter feeding metazoans, so they are animals. They're animals because they have animal cells. They actually have a sperm and eggs, which are similar to other, not exactly the same, but they are similar to other animals' cells. And they utilize a single layer of flagellate cells that are like like in this scheme here. They're called choanocytes. They are able to pump water through these porus or ostium into these chambers of choanocyte cells, and then this forms a unidirectional water current through the body of the sponge, and then is released through the excurrent pore or osculum. However, this definition from 1978, oh, and this is the animal cell and the plant cell. I just want to make a point that they are animal cells. This definition by Bergquist has been challenged recently. So between 1996 and 2015, new sponges called carnivorous sponges were discovered. And these sponges do not have the choanocyte chambers, but they still have other structures that sponges have, such as spicules. So these are the bones that the sponges build. And they, in certain way, don't function the same way than the sponge, in the same way that the sponges that have choanocytes do. They instead can trap plankton, similar to what a carnivorous plant does, and just trap and engulf the particles or the plankton, and then phagocytize that crustaceans or other organisms. So here there is a section of that. So the sponge cells are on the upper part, and on the bottom is the crustacean cells. So the cells are phagocytides and embedded into the sponge body. So we don't really have a clear definition of what a sponge is at this point, considering the new findings. But what is really interesting is that sponges are the most ancient animal. They appear in the Precambrian, and then they actually flourish in the Cambrian. That's where a lot of the excavating sponges, who also can grow into shells, appeared. And then by the late Jurassic, some of the glass sponges, the hexactinalids, formed these massive sponge reefs in the Tethys Ocean, and they form these very long siliceous sponge reef belt, longer than the current Great Barrier Reef in Australia. However, at this point, we only have relictants of these siliceous sponge reef on the coast of the United States and Canada in the Pacific coast. So what are the projects that I'm working on at this point in the lab? We have a couple of projects on population genetics of sponges in the Caribbean Sea, Florida, and the Gulf of Mexico. We are interested in understanding not only how the populations of the sponges are structured as a baseline to understand if climate change can shift the range of expansion, but also clarified the different species. So as you can see here, we have Niphates erecta, is this lavender rope sponge. And then we have other species within the same genus that are very similar. They look almost the same, and they are very confusing and difficult to identify. So we are trying to clarify if they are similar or different species. So we are building some phylogenetic analysis. We have here the different morphotypes or species. So this is what we're grouping. At this point, it's a little bit messy, specifically for these species. And then at the bottom here, we're trying to see a little bit more how the populations in the Caribbean Sea, and here we have the Virgin Islands, is this section here. And on the right side, we have Florida and the Gulf of Mexico. And we're trying to see how the genetic clusters of this population mix or not, if there is a mixture of certain genetic clusters or not, and what populations are connected to each other or not, and how they are structured. So at this point, we can see Florida and the Gulf of Mexico tend to be different or forms a different genetic group than the Virgin Islands. Other projects we have at the moment include the biodiversity of sponges in the Indian River Lagoon. So even that Harbor Branch has been in front, this is our backyard. So Harbor Branch is around here in this area. And the Indian River Lagoon is like 160 miles, about that. And it's the backyard, but it's still, when I joined Harbor Branch, we didn't have a full idea of how many species of sponges were in the lagoon, which is an estuarine area. So we submitted a grant, and with different collaborators, which I have here at the bottom, we are currently barcoding and using taxonomy to develop an online sponge guide. So different people that work here with oysters and commercial mollusk can identify a lot of the sponges that might be growing on the shells. That's the main interest. There are other interests to use sponges to restore habitat where seagrasses have died. So we are giving baseline information to the communities. Now we have other projects related to coral reef monitoring. I have currently a graduate student working on defining microhabitats. So in a very fine scale, microhabitats on quadrants, and specifically try to understand how the interactions among organisms, sponges, corals, algae are changing over time. So we are using a 15-year data set from Florida, and we are following over time to identify if different bleaching events from 2003 to 2018 change these interactions and how the reefs might be structuring in the future in terms of the interactions. So what we do is we take the photographs and we calculate percentage covers of organisms, or we evaluate who is interacting with him in the process. So when I talk about all of this current research, one of the first things that I get asked is, so this was your plan? It was always to do research? I will say, yes, my plan A was to do research because I enjoy it. I find it fascinating. I want to contribute to solve questions from basic, questions in life sciences, all the way to maybe a little bit more complex. So I thought, I want to become a professor. I can make research. Academia came mostly through my postdoc when I started really teaching, and the students gave me feedback and they actually enjoy it. And I realized I could make a difference in other people's life. And I thought that was really interesting. And so I decided, yes, I'm definitely going for academia. However, as I was applying and not getting jobs, I started thinking, what is the plan B? So I started thinking, why not become a journal translator? Maybe an editor one day. I can translate from Spanish to English in science. Maybe that could be a good job. I could be anywhere in the world. Then I thought, why not an astronaut? I actually went to the website of NASA, and a lot of the requirements that for astronaut applications, I was like, yes, I can tick a lot of them, so why not? And plan C was to go more into environmental policy or get a job in the industry. So I did put all of these plans there, and I decided, okay, maybe, some of these will pop up if my plan A doesn't work, but I'm gonna give it a try. So after having the idea of what was my purpose, I decided, okay, where I want to live. And I'm from Colombia, the mountains, and not exactly from the Caribbean, but I do prefer warmer weather. I didn't want to live in a very cold place. And I also wanted to be closer to my family and have certain flexibility so I could fly to my home country and see the other side of the family. So this is something that I tell to my students, is like, where do you really want to be? You know, like there are times in life where you might want to explore new places. That's awesome. But when you settle into a job that may be, you know, a couple of years, you might start thinking like, do you really want to be there or not? So through my applications, you know, I decided initially I was globally. I was like, I don't care where I'm going, you know, as long as I get a postdoc. So I want to go back to my home country, and there were not many opportunities to apply. So I got only one option. And I keep applying the United States and France, Australia, New Zealand, whatever was a possibility. But then I realized through time that as I was getting, you know, closer to my second postdoc, third postdoc, I start focus. So I said, okay, it's going to be Colombia or the United States. So I submit more applications and to these two countries. And then in my last year, I was like, the only place I want to be in the United States is Florida. That's where I want to be. So I focused on that one, and finally I got the position in Florida. So I don't know if you have seen this. It's an article by Dr. Jeremy Jotter. He's an assistant professor at California State University, and he actually inspired me in my strategy of how to get a position in academy. He actually quantified or did the statistics of how many applications he was submitting to get just one job in academia. So he submitted 112 applications, and then over I think 1 or 2 years of hiring season, whereas I did about 60 he did 60 faculty position over the 2015-16 hiring season, and 52 into 16 and 17. So this is always good to show to the students, because you can see it's not just you just send one application, you might need to send more than that. So what is important to think when you are submitting these applications, or what was important for me when I was submitting, is like, I wanted to be close to the family. I also wanted a diverse environment. And as I'm considered a minority here in the United States, I realized I didn't want to be the only minority faculty in that university, and that the university was trying just to check a box because they needed the minority there. I wanted to be in a more diverse community, and maybe that's why I wanted to be in South Florida mostly. I also wanted a place with a strong marine science research that would be open-minded, close to the ocean and the Caribbean Sea, just because that's where I do my research, but also that's the area that I love and I like to be. Tropical, subtropical weather, and that it will be collaborative and that will offer excellent education. And that's, you know, something that I encourage a lot of the students to think about it. Now, the feedback, I definitely wouldn't be where I am if I wouldn't have the mentors, peers, students, and staff that supported me through different locations and places. So one thing I always suggest my students is go and try different internships, summer internships. If you want to do your undergrad here, but then switch for your master's, go and do it. You know, it's sometimes in the variety you find some pleasure, but there is a point where too much variety doesn't take you anywhere. So just be aware of that if you're looking, look for a good mentor. A lot of students come thinking, I want to go to this university. I'm like, is there any good mentor there? And I recommend always that they check with other students that are currently in their labs and ask about the mentor, ask about how are the dynamics in the lab, and if it's a positive environment or not. And then the family and friends. So when you are choosing to go to a job or another one, or choosing to go to one school or the other one, you know, the families and your friends are the people that know you the best. And if you're deciding to go to Alaska and they definitely know you hate cold, they all will tell you, well, you're crazy, you know, just don't go there. And sometimes it's really good to hear that, because once you're in Alaska, you realize, yeah, that's not for me, you know, so that's good. Now for the job applications, and this is just the last part of the talk, is I never had, through my mentors, they were all mostly males, through my undergrad, master's, and my PhD. I had a couple of female faculty members at some point, or reviewers in my master's thesis that were females, but they were definitely not there. And I didn't understood how was the process of application in each country. So when you want to apply to Colombia or here or France, it's totally different. So I was like, hey, I need to inform myself. So I actually bought the Professor is In, and I read the book, and it was really helpful. I also got this other one, a PhD is not enough. I felt really frustrated that it was not enough. So I read it, but so the Professor is In is written by a female professor, Karen Kulski, whereas a PhD is not enough is written by a male. And I found a lot of discrepancies between them, and I couldn't relate that much to the PhD is not enough. I couldn't. It was like in some way discouraging. So I decided to stick to the Professor is In, and I do suggest it for female students to read it if you are interested in academia and in applying for jobs in academia. So how is this kind of route through applying for jobs and getting a job? So just to summarize, you need to clarify your goals. Yeah. You need to get the experience, get to know yourself, open your mind, and get out of the comfort zone. So sometimes we don't know where we're going to go, but it's because we are not ready to take the next step. So you need to get out of that comfort zone. And it might not be the best thing, because when you live in one place and you don't want to move from there, it's very difficult to live and very difficult to change. But then that gives you character and it gives you other experiences. Then once you know what you want to do, you search for that jobs. Then you apply for jobs, and then you deal with rejection. There is always going to be rejection. This is the other part of the equation that nobody prepares too much about that. And is that rejection is part of science and rejectory spines of any other area in life. You get rejected at different levels in your life. So what is important is that you don't get stuck into the rejection for too much time, for a long time, but instead that you persevere and you keep applying. And then as you keep applying, you will keep clarifying your goals. So you might go around this circle several times until you definitely refine your search and find the job that really matches your search. So dealing with rejections, and here is a comparison between my 30 to 50 applications versus the 112 by Jeremy Jodder. So he did 17 interviews, 11 campus visits, and 3 offers. And he did this in basically 2 years. I did mine in 4 years. So I didn't know I had to put so many applications at the beginning. So I catch up in my last 2 years, I guess. And I got 5 interviews, 3 campus visits, and then 2 offers. One of these offers actually was in academia. The other one was in research more than academia. So it's important that it's not just how many publications you have good your research statement is that you need to take every single chance to submit something and tailor it to what it is. And still, there are not guarantees you will get there. But what are the important things once you get to an interview of any job? So you just submit as many as you can, and you might get 1, 2, 3 interviews. So the most important thing I found is just be yourself, because you will never fit in a specific role model for the job. Especially if you are a minority. That's what I realized through the process. Female minority is like, yeah, no, you don't fit anything. They are not standards. So I just encourage everybody, the students, even if you are not a minority, you still are a very unique person, have a very specific career path, and maybe your committee is not associated with your vision is. But if you can sell yourself as you are and then connect that to the interest at that specific university or with that specific location where you want to be, you can become a role model in that place. So the important thing is that you need to know who are you, but the committee, after they revise everything you have done, your CV, everything, you know, and they ask you for an interview, they know that you're good, that you have the possibility to get that job. So what they're looking for, you know, like they see you, they ask you questions, they ask you to give seminars, they, you know, but what they are looking for mostly is if you are a good team player, if you could join them, like if they see you joining and working with you, you know. So it's about how you present yourself. So sometimes in academia, as we study, you know, as we are students, it's all about you have to get this GPA and you have to get these other requirements and you have to get, and it's so insisting into you as a person have to get all of these that sometimes we forget about socializing with others or working with others. And that skills, the social skills, that's what they are looking in this interview. That's what I realized. And I was like, this is so interesting. After all that you have done at this point, the only way to separate between, you know, 5 excellent candidates is which one of them will fit better with this team of people. So I suggest my students try to find balance in your life, try to do other activities that can help you define who you are, and also how you can fit into the communities and how you can play different roles, you know, because it doesn't matter if you go as a grant writer, teacher, or researcher, administrator, supervisor. At the end, what we are looking and what committees are looking is, can we work with you? Can we work together? So you need to be empathic and curious and caring and collaborate and be professional. And all of this seems like overwhelming on top of everything you have to do. But this is something that if you have it, is super important once the interview comes into place. And the final thing is the visualization or your mindset. So sometimes if we put ourselves in the position of like, oh, I don't know, maybe I'm not good enough, you doubt yourself, you kind of lose half of the path to get where you need to go. So by visualizing where you can see yourself, you can change your attitude, you can refine what is the place for you to be, you can understand better the applications, look through them, and really find that job opportunity. And with that, I'd like to thank you. And if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer. I hope it was not too long. I was checking just my phone here, but it's just a personal point of view. And I think it's a way to inspire also the students when they feel most of the time lost in the process. And it's that it depends on you to pursue and keep going.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. I actually do have a couple of questions I kind of run through. Currently, right now, I am pursuing my second bachelor's degree, and I do intend to go for a master's, possibly PhD. So I know a lot of master's programs and PhD programs, they require during the application process to find a faculty sponsor from that university. What is the best way for us to connect with the faculty to find, a professor who's going to kind of line up with our values, with our ideas as to what we're trying to accomplish ultimately, and who will be the best support for us should we get accepted and to start going for that degree there?
Okay, so I think the best way to go sometimes to really have a deep interaction with faculty members is to search for summer internships within the same institution. So for example, Harbor Branch, we have summer internships, and most of the faculty members, we take students in the summer. Try to apply and try to get into that summer internships. If you see they are giving talks, for example, Harbor Branch has a lot of different talks and faculty members present talks, assist, ask the question, connect with that faculty in that way. you also can send, and I receive, and other faculty members probably receive tons of emails with the students that want to graduate and they are looking for. I try to answer as many as I can. Sometimes I can't, you know. So I actually, at the end of the year, I do a search before I finish the term and see like who I didn't answer, just to be kind. But sometimes you can't answer everybody, and it's very difficult when you have like 50 applications of students wanting to join your lab and you don't have enough funding. So that's something you are going to probably find out. But when I select somebody, when I have the funding, I see what is their interest. Always send your CV, always send like a nice email that show why you are interested in that program and how it connects. Read some of the papers of that faculty member and see, you know, and ask what are the, you know, the research in the moment. You can check their websites and see what is the most updated information, and then connect through that. Connect through the grad students. Okay, so you can ask grad students in the different laboratories like, hey, do you know if there is any new project? Do you know if the faculty is taking new students? There are just different ways to get connected. I get sometimes students kind of sending me a message, hey, I met this person in a conference and gave a great presentation. I was really interested in your lab. And then when the student contact me, I already kind of have an idea that there was something good there. Mm-hmm. But I do read the people's applications when I have openings in my lab and go. And when I don't, I read them and I have to say, I'm sorry, but I can't. I don't have all the I don't have all the time to offer to you. That's basically, or the money and support.
Another question I have is, I know publications, like the peer review publications throughout the master's programs and throughout the PhD programs, are really vital to helping you know, the individual students grow. Do you think as an undergrad student, we should be also focusing on possibly trying to do some sort of publication to kind of help us, to make us more, I guess, stand out more when it comes to our applications to the grad schools?
Yeah, I think it's important. So I teach 2 honors students, so they have to do an honors thesis. And I try, not all of them are going to get a publication, but some of them may do. I try to check, you know, like if the students have done an honors thesis or not. I don't define that as my, you know, like, yes, they have a publication or not, but it's always a plus if the student that you get for grad school has some experience writing a thesis or trying to submit a publication or participating in some reports on writing, because immediately you can see how eager the student is, but also has the experience. So it's much easier to go through the same process when you're doing the master's. But I suggest, even if you don't submit the publication as an undergrad student, get enough research experience and get to write things, you know, like participate or collaborate into papers that maybe PIs are trying to work on it and submit. You can put that, you know, like, I helped to write this part here, even if you don't end up publishing. But I think that is important. Definitely, you know, if you have 3 candidates and one of them has already 1 publication and the other 2 no, you're going to check that one too, you know. Mm-hmm. You might interview the 3 of them and give the opportunity to the other 2, but it's something that will call definitely the attention, you know, of any faculty member.
Oh, thank you. That's right. Does anybody else have any sort of questions for Dr. Fonnegra for the evening?
Dr. Fonnegra, this is Dr. Drexler. How are you?
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was an outstanding talk. And it was really interesting to me. And I think it's interesting to the whole audience, including those who will see this, because it's being recorded. And I hope that a lot more students will see this, not just students, but colleagues and other faculty. Really interesting to see your path, and then it wasn't just, you know, linear. It was up, down, 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 and up, you know. And I thought it was great. I really appreciated that. And I think it's important for students to know that it's not all roses, you know. It's there's a lot of failure, there's a lot of down times, And as women in academia, we can help support each other and sort of lift each other up. Or as Deb Holland, who is a New Mexico senator, was saying, she lowers the ladder. That's how she sort of characterizes, lowers the ladder for other women to climb up. Anyway, I just feel like your experiences are really great, especially the fact that you're so honest and sharing your path being up and down and then all over. So I think it's wonderful, and congratulations to you, and thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. You know, I was like, I've been giving these kind of talks in different contexts, and I realized that when I was a student, nobody gave me like the background, and I was like, how you did it? You know, like trying to figure out what were the rules of the game. And so as I started developing mine in some way and thinking like, what really made sense to me now that I got here? Because when I was going through the path, I don't even knew what I was doing. I was just randomly playing the game as I could. And I definitely had mentors that say like, no, this should be this way, or it should be that, little by little, you know? So I think that giving that task, especially, you know, right now through the pandemic and how the students are, and everybody's like, oh man, it's up and down, how we're going to survive this. And it's that life by itself, the characteristic of life is that kind of yin and yang. You have moments in which everything kind of goes smooth and as planned maybe, or as you imagine. And there are moments where everything crashes suddenly and you don't know what to do in that moment. So I think that what it can make a really successful career in some way is determined by that moments in which you kind of crash and you need to still figure out how to continue from there and not give up. You know, you will have the gap, you still have to go with the flow. And as I said, sometimes my students, that gap I have after my master's, when I was like, oh man, no jobs, now what I'm going to do, probably was the best. I spent 6 months with my grandma, and were the best 6 months with my grandma in my life. And to this day, I'm so thankful I had that gap because it was fantastic. But you don't realize that when you're going through the process and you are a student and you feel as a failure because everybody's getting into PhDs or they get jobs or whatever. And you are like, man, living with grandma. But whatever that moment of in between teach you, later in life, it gives you other kind of a strength or power, I think. And that power becomes like how you deal with things when things are not working, and you still keep your spirit up to deal with that. So I think a lot of that comes from that moment that you realize it doesn't matter what happened, you still can go through it. It will not be maybe perfect or how you imagine, but you still can go through it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I totally agree. That beautifully said. The adversity and perseverance through adversity, I think, is a huge skill. I wanted to recognize Dr. Milliman. She asked a question in the chat. Do you mind, Ashley, if I go ahead and read Dr. Milliman's question?
Go for it.
Okay, thanks. When you're finishing up and publishing those hanging research projects, were there any general takeaways on what was holding up this work? Things to overcome if students are having issues finishing? Great question.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I interact with two students at least. Two students that were master's students. One of them had finished moving to another job, and the 2 chapters of the thesis, which were on reproduction of corals, I thought were fantastic. And I had met him in the lab before working, but he never published anything. And it was new information. And I was like, you know what, this needs to be published. So I connect back with these students and I realized that was one. And the other one was another student I actually had mentor. I was a PhD student, he was a master, and I was kind of mentoring him. So it was easier for that student because I could guide him and the faculty member allowed me to guide him and help him. But I realized for the first student that really left without publishing, really frustrated, was that he had tried to submit and he was rejected with horrible review. The feedback was so bad. This student crashed to the floor. and he didn't have a faculty mentor. I realized that he did the submission process without any mentoring. He kind of went itself, like, oh, I just want to go here and jump into it. And the faculty member like, what's great, kind of, but then it was destroyed. And I think there was never a time to sit down, take the feedback, and encourage the student to use the feedback to build better the paper and resubmit it. So I think sometimes it's that secondary part that, yes, you're going to be rejected anyways at some point by journals, but they give you feedback that you can use to resubmit. And then the students fail to think that it's possible, you know, that maybe it's not over. And the reviews, when they are really, really bad, they can be so discouraging that you will never get to touch that side of science again. So that was the perception of this student. So what I did is I took all that review, sit down with him, went through the process, discussed what he had done, and then I went back into the lab, reviewed some of the slides, got a little bit more of data based on what the reviewers were asking for, complemented, run some analysis. He actually helped me to run other ones. And I also kept the student as a first author. So I chat with my faculty member and I said, none of these theses are my work, you know? So why we don't keep the first author as the students? My intention was not to take authorship for their job, but instead help and be a co-author. So the agreement with them was that. So I think it's how you teach the students to deal with the process of submitting and publishing more than anything else. If there is no mentorship there, it can crush them and they will never publish.
Really interesting. Yeah. There was somewhere that I read, I can't remember where, but you have to go through so many failures in order to get a pass, right? So it's kind of like each failure or each rejection or whatever, each criticism is just one step closer to you succeeding. So
yeah, and it's how you take criticism. So I do remember in my early years as an undergrad student, the first criticisms, you know, in that time we didn't have the review on Word. It was like printed document and, you know, writing red, and then the other reviewer would come with green and the other one would come with blue, and it was the same document, and you were like, oh my goodness, trying first to understand what they wanted. It was like panic mode initially, like, this is so bad. And then I learned, you need to learn to detach from who you are as a person, that you are a good person, that you're putting the effort, from the document. So I do tell my students that your document is like a sculpture, it's a piece of art or a painting. And when you hang it in the wall and you ask criticism, everybody's going to give you different criticism to it. And art is there to be criticized and to be valued and to be all of that. But there is always improvement. You can do always improvement to any piece of art in different ways if you want it. So if you see a document in that context and you detach from that, it's much easier for students to receive criticism. That's what I realized. It's kind of your ego versus your piece of work, and that understanding that in science, you're always gonna have reviewers, you're always gonna have to be fixing things. It's not a perfect world. So a lot of the very straight A students that always get everything really right, when they face this, they crash horribly because they are not used to have documents criticized, and they expect that since they are very little to high school, they have A, why they're going to be criticized at this point. So it's an ego kind of like thing. I think it's something like that, but it's because the standards in the schools is that, you know, it's like for you to be good, you shouldn't have any errors. You shouldn't be making mistakes. And this is kind of it's just like a double moral in some way, because we all know that to be better, you always make mistakes and learn from them. So
yes. Yeah, there's a great TED Talk, and I can't remember it. I'll try to look it up before we hang up here. But there's a great talk, especially for women. Women aren't taught really to fail, or to fall, or to whatever. They're taught to, maybe be pretty or be perfect, or you know what I mean? But there's a great TED Talk on this. I'll try to find it. Right.
Yeah. It's that perfectionist standard that society imposed into all of us, males and females, in a different way for males than for females. The standards for a male are pretty high into what they should offer, and they feel really stressed. Like I see grad students, males, less and less going to grad school. This is the funny thing. Males are not getting into the sciences as much as they used to. Now there are more females into the sciences, but then the same standards of society are still there. It's like, you should be pretty, you should look good, everything has to be in certain way. And a lot of females grow with that mindset. So when things get out of that pattern, they don't know what to deal with it. And that's true,
That's right. I found the TED Talk. I put the link in the chat, but it's teach girls bravery, not perfection.
Awesome.
Bravery to fail. Yeah, really good TED Talk. Yeah, reminds me exactly of what you're speaking about today. So it's very inspirational. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Dr. Fonnegra before we, I guess, close up for the evening? I think we are good then. Let's see, who else do we have here? I guess we're pretty much all good. I mean, we could stay on, just do a quick recap for wSTEM in a moment. But other than that, I just want to say a huge thank you to Dr. Fonnegra for joining us tonight. I have to say, your talk really hit home for me. It hit a lot of the points that I've been, questioning and kind of fearing, as I continue on my journey, especially with, I guess, everyone does kind of think, okay, I'm gonna get this degree and then I'm gonna go straight to this degree and everything's gonna fall in line. And just kind of seeing, the trials that you had to go through kind of lets me feel a little bit better of knowing that it's not going to be a smooth path and it's going to be okay as long as I, stay focused on the path for my purpose and what I want to do. So I really appreciate you taking your time out. I definitely look forward to talking to you in the future. As I said, I am going to be applying to FAU. That is one of my schools that I look forward to hopefully going to. So maybe one day I'll make it down there to Harbor Branch here soon and I can meet you in person as well. But other than that, again, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Ashley. And yes, if you want to come and visit, just let me know. We are open now. Still, we have some restrictions, but this is all good. And I also encourage you to check the summer internships. They should open February, March. And it's for undergrads and grad students. And you can go and spend 3 months at Harbor Branch and do research for 3 months in the summer. I did it more than 15 years ago, and I never expect I will be back to Harbor Branch. I always wanted it. And 15 years ago, my mentor was Shirley Pompani. I was a Colombian student. I was international. And for me, one of the most gratifying things of coming back to Harbor Branch was to work with her again. And today we have 2 different projects that we are collaborating, and that she's still there. And she actually volunteered and served as my mentor now as an assistant professor, and 2 different times in life. So that summer internships can, for me, change my direction and my life and my path in many ways. So apply to that one, apply to any other ones. And yes, I will be happy to see you at Harbor Branch if you want to come and visit, and any other students that want to come and see the program, check the program and see the facilities.
Thank you. I guess with that, we will close up. I guess wSTEM leadership, so you want to stay on board for a few minutes? Okay. So other than that, we will wish you good night, Dr. Fonnegra, and thank you so much.
Good night, everybody. And yeah, have a good sleep.
Thank you very
Bye.
much. Good night.
That. There we go. Let's see who else still with us. Sarah's here. Dina's here.
Ashley, do you want to turn off the recording just so?
Oh, yeah. How do I do that? Where's that? There it is. Got it.